I'm really happy to have been invited here tonight. So, maybe now you've worked it out that the voice that you're hearing isn't actually my own. It's a voice of an Auslan interpreter. I'm grateful to have the two interpreters here with me tonight, not just supporting me communicate, but supporting me to understand others. If you saw me walking down the street, would you know that I've endured a health journey that has actually changed the course of my life? Would you know that the journey has resulted in me losing my hearing completely? Would you know that during that time, everything I thought I once knew and believed in was challenged? Would you know that I was deaf? Have you ever met a deaf person before? Up until 15 years ago, neither had I. At the age of 14, I started having trouble following conversations with my friends and family. One memory that stands out to me was using the phone. This was before my mum allowed me to have a mobile, so my friends and I still called each other on a landline. I had the receiver on my right ear, and I was hearing everything fine. But when I switched to my left ear, I couldn't hear anything but just muffled sounds. I quickly brushed it off. I didn't really make anything of it. But as time went on, my friends started noticing my hearing loss more and pointed it out to my mother. "You should really get your daughter's hearing checked. All she does is ignore us." But the best way to describe my mum is a driving force. You can't make a comment like that without her going into overdrive and demanding to find out what's wrong. In the coming months, I was diagnosed with neurofibromatosis. So neurofibromatosis type 2, actually, or in short, NF2. I'll try not to get too clinical, but what we'll do is just give you a brief background of what that means. NF2 is most commonly associated with tumours growing on the central nervous system. And that can lead to complications such as deafness, spinal cord compression, and also facial nerve paralysis. It is a genetic health condition. However, my mum or dad didn't have it. And for this reason, diagnosis didn't come quickly for me, and I underwent a series of inconclusive hearing tests before an MRI revealed 2 acoustic neuroma tumours. One was on my left hearing nerve and the other on my right. I was told that once we surgically removed both of those tumours, that this would result in complete deafness. I couldn't blame my mum or my dad, no matter how much my teenage angst wanted me to. I couldn't. So during this time, there was a lot of clinical talk, a lot of tears, and a whole lot of confusion. This tied with a lack of understanding about deaf culture and about NF2 in general. In the past, I'd never actually been sick a day in my life. And then one day, to be diagnosed with an incurable disease that would be with me for the rest of my life was just something I could not understand. At 14, losing my hearing was earth-shattering. I kept asking, why is this happening? I was young, I believed I was a good person, and I had good faith. So why was this happening to me? I just couldn't make sense of it. And I remember just wanting to disappear. I've had my teenage and adult years filled with surgeries, regular hearing tests, MRIs, balance tests, and a 2.5-year chemotherapy trial, which was to try and shrink and stabilise my tumours. At 18 years old, after an annual MRI, 12 tumours had appeared on my spine. I remember the day I was given this news so clearly. It seemed that after 4 years of dealing and trying to accept one thing, I was being hit with another. So we turned to an ear, nose and throat surgeon for advice. So sitting in his office for the first time was daunting and very scary. I had no idea what to expect. He read my file and looked at me, and I said, "What do I do?" And his response was, "Go and learn Auslan." I'm sorry, what? That one exchange changed my entire life. My doctor gave me an incredible gift when he suggested that. Learning Auslan has opened a whole new world for me. I began learning Auslan at 15 and was a part of the hearing unit in my Catholic high school. Our teacher had organised a day out to an organisation that supports deaf youth. So we came to the Ephrata Centre, a Catholic organisation for deaf and hard of hearing people. At the time, I didn't really know much about the organisation, but I still remember the day that I walked into the Ephrata Centre and the feeling that I had 15 years ago. I knew it was a very special place. It was the beginning of a beautiful journey of being involved in many deaf organisations. The Ephrata Centre is a wonderful place where I have now worked for over 3 years. I have found that NF2 has challenged everything. And I find that I think it tried to take away my faith. The journey itself had made me stronger, more empathetic to the world around me, determined, and just a little bit stubborn. After many years of when everything goes wrong for you, the hardest thing is to believe the best is yet to come. There was never a moment where I didn't tell myself that everything happens for a reason. Which is a heartwarming story of how my 2 goddaughters and future husband came into my life. During my most trying and difficult times in life, I was given little blessings along the way to help push me through. When I was 14, and struggling to accept my new diagnosis, I was asked to be the godmother of a beautiful little girl named Karina, who is now 16. Through that year, going back and forth to the hospital for chemotherapy and tests every week, I was asked to be the godmother of a second little angel named Emily, who is now 7. Being a godmother is my pride and joy. Over the years, I've watched my relationship with Karina evolve. And when I take a look back and I see how our conversations over the years have grown, we would discuss everything from schoolwork, clothes, love of music when she was younger. And as I see her grow, I see her asking me difficult to answer questions such as, how do you still manage to have faith when the world is so cruel? And it wasn't easy for me to answer that. She has seen my experience with grief and with loss. How do you explain why bad things happen to good people, to a young girl who's still trying to learn how the world works? Well, it took me some time, and I've learned that God is with me, guiding me through my journey in many unexpected ways. A few years ago, 3 weeks before my third major surgery, I began working at a deaf organisation in Parramatta. And as some of you may know, I'm obsessed with fantastic coffee. And it just can't be average. I won't accept that. I've tried a few different places around the area and found this little cafe named St. Drogo's. The coffee there was perfect. There were 2 friendly baristas who would make you feel welcome and start the day with a smile. I never mentioned the fact that I was deaf to either of them. And because I began losing my hearing at 14, my speech had already developed. So many people tell me that because my speech is so clear, it confuses them that I'm actually deaf. I never actually told either of the baristas that I was deaf. But a few months into working in Parramatta, I'd arrived to pick up my morning coffee one day, and the lovely barista started signing to me. I was shocked actually, but having that little bit of access made my entire day. A few months later, the same lovely barista asked me on a date. He was lovely and he made good coffee and he was cute. So why not? On our first date, he mentioned a work friend of mine had been the one to tell him that I was deaf. He had never realised before that. But after he knew I was deaf, he went and enrolled in an Auslan course before he asked me out on a date because he wanted to be able to communicate with me. It was the perfect love story that began with a cup of coffee at a cafe named after St. Drogo, who happens to be the patron saint of coffee and of deaf people. How incredibly fitting. Throughout my journey, I've been introduced to the deaf community where I feel like I've found where I belong. I have learned to adjust to a new way of living, met so many wonderful people, and found a career in the deaf community where I spend my days working with a community who supports deaf people. I feel that this journey led me to meet a beautiful man who worked across the road from my work at a little coffee shop, who loves me, sees past my hearing loss, and has learned Auslan to communicate with me. We are now engaged and will be married in 4 months. A place in my life I never thought I'd reach. There's nothing my hearing loss has stopped me from achieving. It was even used as my inspiration to go to university and complete a degree in social work. I was so inspired at a young age to make a change in the world that I now work with deaf and hard of hearing teenagers. Giving deaf people the access to inclusion through technology and through language can see them soar. The deaf community is made up of vibrant people who have a strong sense of culture. It didn't take me long to realise that being deaf is not just the physical aspect of losing hearing. It's about belonging to a community. Thank you for watching.